also well. And spiritual coach, intuitive reader, and I'm not sure where this video is going to go, but I wanted to talk about my own perspective and journey and how I became a numerologist. You see, my insight and perspective on numerology is very different than what modern or Western or any other perspective probably is for you. As I discovered in my own numbers that there were certain things being obscured because of where we have learned how to look at numbers, especially with Western numerology. Now, my personal background started off in graphic design. So, with graphic design, you learn a lot about symbols, right? Through typefaces, through fonts, through learning about spacing and kerning and sans fonts, serif fonts. You learn about colors and why people choose certain colors and symbols when it comes to designing businesses, designing logos, designing letterheads, even. So I have a lot of knowledge when it comes to understanding how and why people choose the things they choose and what invokes certain feelings and emotions, right? Because when it comes to design, you want to create a certain impression, right, to people. Um, when it comes to, how you want to present your business, how you want to present yourself. I had to come up with my own design over here at Mind Over Number and what I wanted that to symbolize to others. And with the numerology, we think it's, the study of numbers, right? And we see numbers all the time. And sometimes we may think that we created numbers, but numbers have always been here. They are what the universe has manifested into our physical world. And from the beginning, okay, in the beginning, there was one. Okay, so with the energy of one itself, it always brings, right, that fresh start energy or new opportunities, new perspectives, new ideas. It's manifestation energy. It's the energy of creation. That is the energy of one. But with Western numerology, I noticed that there tends to be an oversimplification of energies. And this is because of the influence of the church, okay? It always comes down to religion, especially when you're talking about spirituality. It's this dogmatic view or strict doctrine that shows us a path, but it confines us to only think one type of way. And the moment that you start to think outside of this structure, that's when the fear mongering starts. That's when the denouncing starts. That's when people start to call you crazy, even for thinking differently. But all great leaders in our time have always thought differently. They've always thought with the energy of one, which is innovation, right? They're able to bring forth new ideas, new thoughts, new forms into this physical world by using their intuition, their divine guidance outside of rigid structures. So, Western or modern numerology has created this triad of numbers, right? We only focus on 11, 22, and 33 when it comes to master numbers, but they go well beyond 33, and they chose to discontinue 44, ignoring 55, 66, 77. Okay. Um, they even term them power numbers, to mark a division and energy. But this reduction was also done due to base 10 mathematics, right? Cycles 1 through 9. However, the universe and even more ancient traditions beyond, the Romans and Christianity, they understood these cycles of 12. And even with tarot, things cycle in 12. There are 78 cards in a tarot deck, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10 plus 11 plus 12 all add up to 78. And of course, that is no coincidence. But these cycles of 12 also come down to our DNA. They also are reflected in our calendar, also timekeeping, measurements. The Egyptians measured using a 12 knotted rope. And this 12 knotted rope, I'm going to draw a picture real quick for you, which is what we now know as the Pythagorean triangle, but it was originally called the Egyptian triangle, right? But you see, how they used to measure things was with this rope that was knotted in 12 different sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think I messed up somewhere. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. So there's 3 on this side, right? And then 4. And then 5. So make sure we get this straight. Okay. We have 3. Yes, 3. And then we have 4. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 3, 4, 5 ratio. I don't know if y'all can see that there. But this ratio comes from Egyptian mathematics. And that is where Pythagoras, right, the father of Western numerology, took his information, his insights, because he was more than a mathematician or mathematician. He was also a mystic. Now, these cycles of 12 also come up when it comes to measuring, right, and our clock, even, right? 60 seconds, 60 minutes, 60 divided by 12. That is all base 12 math. So it's not something we don't know or are aware of. We just discovered that it's easier to count with cycles of 10. Now, the Mayans used base 20 mathematics, and in Babylonia, that's where they used base 60, going on to, Sumeria, that's also base 60 calculations. And what we find with base 12 is that things naturally fit and are easily divisible in this cycle of energy. Now, because our calendar is already in this cycle of 12, there's really no need to reduce anything if you're using the Gregorian calendar anyway. But because of that, the way that I personally look at cycles is through 12. And this cycle of 12, you understand that master numbers naturally fall into this cycle because base 12 is cycles 1 through 11. There's no need to create exceptions because they are already part of the energy. And applying this information, we can then look at how that corresponds with the tarot as well as astrology, which also follows cycles of 12, whether it's Western or even Chinese, right? The Chinese zodiac, that's 12 different animals, 12 different cycles of energy. And by making this correlation and correspondence, we can get more in depth with numbers, right? Get more details, get a broader picture, a higher awareness to our own energy. As I find that many people actually don't resonate that well with numerology, okay? When they look at their numbers, they start to get this negative feeling, especially when it comes to discussing karmic energy. The idea of karmic things or karma energy, karma really just means energy itself. So anytime you say karma energy or karmic energy, you're being redundant, okay? It's like saying chai tea, right? Chai means tea. But certain things get lost in translation. Anytime something is karmic, that is an energetic imbalance, right? Something that appears to be challenging and will require a little bit more effort on your part to overcome. And this is also reflected when it comes to master number energies, because they are reflecting their own energy to themselves, right? If you are a master number 11, if you have that anywhere in your chart, not just your life path, it could be your name, it could be your birthday. If you are 22, right, you get 2 reflected back onto you, and this is a sign of inner work needed. In order for your inner world to match your outside world, you're going to have to look at yourself. And this is why master numbers are so challenging, at least in those energies that resonate on a lower scale. So that's 11, 22, 33, and 44, right? 2, 4, 6, and 8, right? That is the numbers of the physical realm. So after you get past that 8 energy, you now have 9. And 9 acts as a bridge to the lower realms and higher realms, which is why it's often the most misunderstood of all the numbers, because it reflects and embodies all the cycles 1 through 8, and also understands the higher realms or higher numbers reflected in 11 and 12 if you follow cycles 1 through 11. Now, because of the church, okay, we're back to the church, yes. They place this superstition surrounding 13, which comes right after 12, mind you, and completely changed our calendar as a whole. If you look back at the Hebrew calendar, it was a moon calendar. It looked at the moon cycles. And there are 13 moon cycles in a calendar, which is why we call a month a month. And these 13 moon cycles reflect transformation. And 13, when it comes to tarot, is represented by the death card. Now, death itself is also called rebirth. And rebirth is also another way to say reincarnation. And that is something that has been excluded in many modern biblical texts. You know, the idea of reincarnation, right? The idea that things don't truly end, they just start again. It is impossible to destroy energy, right? Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It is just transformed. And because of this spiritual understanding that you may or may not have, more than likely, experienced multiple lifetimes, when the idea of religion came about, this idea of spirit or connecting with a higher self became superstition. It became a cult, right? It became something demonic, okay, for lack of a better word. And that's because people lost their divinity. They lost their connection with the source. They lost connection with having their own thoughts and relied on an external force for validation. So, whatever philosophy or structure that you want to follow, at the end of it all, we are all part of that same source, that same level of awareness. Back to numerology. When we reduce numbers, we tend to lower the frequency being presented by that number itself. So if I were to simply, whoa, let me study myself. If I simply were to take 11 and reduce this to a 2, okay, we lose all that accumulation of energy presented by 11. Because 11 isn't just 11. Okay, 11 could be 10 plus 1. It could be 9 plus 2. Okay, it could be 8 plus 3. It's also 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. Okay, you get the picture. I'm not going to write all of that down. But it is an accumulation of energy. Now, Chaldean, I can never say that right. It took the energy of 9 outside of its calculations because it was centered more on phonetics, right? How things sound, how things resonated. So in its calculations, it took cycles 1 through 8 which is base 8 math, into account. But you may notice that if you compare Chaldean with Pythagorean numerology, there's usually a difference of exactly 9 when you figure out the sum. But you can always test it out for yourself, as I always welcome everybody to do. Pythagorean numerology is centered on the English alphabet, which has gone through many changes, okay, over time. But we have this alphabet created from symbols that have been taken from other aspects of other cultures over time. And we don't simply just use the alphabet or just use cycles 1 through 9 for the alphabet because it's convenient, okay? The alphabet was structured first in accordance to how we view the sounds and vibrations of each individual letter. The numbers that we use now are also symbols, okay? So whenever you see the numbers 1 through 9, they are not just letters or numbers. They're a picture. And these are the pictures that we chose to recognize the energies of 1 through 9. And when you have a graphic design perspective, okay, you start looking at all the ways that we write 1 and why we write 1 with this base or as an eye or with a tail or not a tail, and sometimes I looks like L, and well, you start to ask more questions and wonder why we look at it that way. And so when I look at 1, I'm not just looking at the value of 1 as a number. I'm looking at the picture of 1, at least in my head. And 1 itself is always that energy of taking charge, moving things forward, right? It's a parallel line. It's just a straight line. It is the in-between of 2 points, actually. We have 1 point here, 1 point here. And to get from that point to the second point, we have to begin with nothing. We have to begin with the first point, which is what we call 0. And that's also what I call my board, because it is nothing and everything all at the same time. All numbers emerge from the void, the nothingness that we call 0. And this idea of 0 being nothing is what math has done to 0. Because of this base 10 calculation that things only cycle 1 through 9, but then what happens when you get to 10? That's a whole cycle of energy. Yes, yes. 10 is an entire cycle of 1 through 9. You know, that's an accumulation of experience. It's a lot of traits. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. plus a 0 plus a 1, all embodied in 10 energy. So if we were to reduce that down to 1, like we do in modern or Western numerology, we lose all that energy. We lose all the details. We lose a whole layer of meaning that often gets missed. And this is what I do not do. So you can call this the red pill you found in your numerology matrix, okay? Because the blue pill wants you to reduce your energy, wants you to lower yourself, wants to create this limiting perspective, and wants you to cut yourself down. It wants you to think that karmic numbers means that you have some sort of debt to pay back, when that is not the case, okay? It just shows a testing path. It's a testing energy. In fact, anybody who was born in the 1900s carries the karmic number of 19. It shows a lesson, okay? And lessons are just opportunities for you to grow and develop, not just on a physical level, but on a soul level, which is what we all chose to do, regardless of not if you have karmic numbers in your chart. You still experience the karmic numbers at least once a month, thanks to our calendar. So, I'm a little all over the place. I don't know what I just talked about in the last 30 minutes or so, but now to get to the point that I'm trying to make. So we're going to look at today's date. Don't come on my handwriting. Which is February 24th, 2025. Now, if I were looking at this number like it's somebody's life path, I'm going to rewrite that. Western numerology would want you to lower and simplify this energy so that I'm ahead of my time. Okay. We want you to lower the 24 to the 6, right? And 2025 would become a 9. And if you were to add 2 plus 6 plus 9, that would be 17. Making today a 17-8 day, according to Western numerology. And whenever you're looking at numbers, the number right before the slash is going to be the dominant energy. So the dominant energy of today would be 7, which works through 1 to create the energy of 8. And 8 is a very powerful energy, right? It is the number of karma. Okay, it's about what you put in is what you get back out. And that could be positive or negative, depending on what you do. But 8 is about inner power, right? It's about learning how to go with the flow. And at some point, you reach a point where you can decide to go up or down, okay? Because when you turn 8 on its side, we have infinity. But with today being a 17-8 day in Western numerology, you would think it's about just simply material matters, right? It's all about eight, okay? They completely ignore the 17 at times and just look at eight. And when you look at just eight, you miss out on what kind of eight day we have. And with it being a 17-8 energy, it's a very healing energy. It's a very ambitious energy which seeks out information in order to start something new. And that is the kind of energy that we have for the day, because through that 7 in combination with that 1, it's a reflective, restful energy. And then the 1 brings in new beginnings, but that combination brings in that inner strength, that power, that authority that 8 has. And if we just look at it as an 8 day, it's very boring, okay? It doesn't tell us much, okay? 8 day, it's about material matters, okay? It's about asserting yourself, blah, 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 blah. But it's really not. It's about reflecting on your own authority and how you want to take charge and balance yourself out. But this is not how I look at numbers. If I were to interpret today, we believe, 24 as it should be, because it shouldn't be reduced any further. It's naturally in its state. But 2025 is a very large number. And we want to find out the compound energy influencing this 25, or the reduced energy of 2025, which is going to be 9. And if we add all this up, we see it's a 35 8 day. Now, what does that mean? Well, with it being a 35 8 day, the focus becomes on 5, which is about change, okay? It's about adaptability, it's about versatility. And then the 3 itself is about expression. So it's about changing the way that you express yourself, your authority, learning to seek out a different way to communicate, that maybe a way to balance out a situation, balance out what you feel within to your outside world. And that sounds similar to a 17-8 day. But it's those nuances, it's that change of energy that lets you understand that 7 isn't really 5 energy, or maybe it is. Because when it comes to tarot, the Hierophant is 5. And when it comes to 3, right? That's supposed to be the number of creativity, right? It's a very artistic number. And, well, 1, you will notice that there seems to be 2 steps missing between how I calculated these 2 numbers, right? 5 to 7, 3 to 1. We've lowered the energy by 2 places by using base 10 compared to base 12 cycles. And so if you understand that reduction or oversimplification can lose these details, a part of yourself might be lost. A part of yourself may be left out because 35 is completely different than 17. 35 has an accumulation of energy that has not been experienced yet by 17 energy. And although they both resonate underneath 8 energy, 35 itself is more expressive. It is more adaptable, right? It's a more energy focused on changing, where 17 is focused on withdrawal. And I gotta tell you, the energy I'm feeling today is definitely not a 7. Now we're going to push this a little further, okay? Because you may say, it does feel like a 7 day. Well, why does it feel like a 7 day? To look at the higher awareness or consciousness of the energy, I use what is called a peridition method in your numerology charts. If you haven't gotten a chart reading from me, you probably don't know. But I also use this peridition method because it is closer to Egyptian numerology, which is where Pythagoras gets all his information from in the first place. But the peridition method looks at the energies that we like to leave out. The full compound energy that we like to leave out of numbers. And with the year itself, we're not just looking at each individual number of the year with the peridition method. It's also looking at the, how do I word this? It's looking at the century, and it's looking at the decade, right? Because the decade you are born, okay, a whole accumulation of 10 years, is going to be different than the next decade you're born. And the century you are born also plays an effect on your generational number. So when we look at the century, which is the 20th century, and add that to the decade, the 25th decade of the 20th century, mind you, on the 24th day in the second month, we get a bigger number. We get 71 and 8. But the focus is now on 1. 1 is now working through 7 to create the 8 energy. But we're now looking at 71, which is an even greater cycle of energy than just 17 or 35. The focus is now centered on 1 energy. And 1 is the number of manifestation, right? It's about new ideas, new concepts. It's very original. It's very innovative. And when 1 is working with 7, that creates a different energy than 7 working through 1. Because 1 is leading that energy as opposed to 7 leading the energy. And 7 is more reflective, whereas 1 is about forward thinking, right? It's about moving things forward, and the way it moves things forward is by providing information, which is the number of 7, right? 7 seeks information, it seeks knowledge, it's very analytical and introspective. And by understanding how the layers of cycles are built upon, right? We started off with 17, looked a little further, got 35, and then we fell upon 71. So all these vibrations, all these numbers show different layers, different levels of awareness. And it's important, at least for me, to look at these details and not confine myself with these exceptions, with these things we call hidden numbers, because nothing is really hidden when you ask why and not look at just how. Because when you just want to know how something works and then it stops working, you don't really know how to fix it because you don't know the source of the problem. And by looking at the construction of where we get these numbers from and peeling back the layers behind why we apply things a certain way, we then are able to get a broader perspective, right? a more detailed, a more practical understanding of why certain things are a certain way. And when we do things for a very long time, we start to become complacent and stop looking at ways to improve. Now, there's a whole different way to convert these numbers into actual base 12 mathematics or numerology, but because of the calendar itself already being in this cycle of 1 through 11, that's not going to be part of this video, at least. This was just simply to give you an idea of how I think, how I communicate, how I explore these uh, nuances found in your numbers, in your chart, so that I can give you a broader understanding and give you more practical instructions on how and why your numbers may not work for you. And it could be because we're not looking deep enough and we're oversimplifying things when we are multi-dimensional beings, right? We can't be confined to just one box, right? We're not just one thing. Numerology is not just one thing, okay? And the energy of this day has brought me to explain this to you. So hopefully you got something out of it. If you have any questions or want me to dive deeper in any part of what I talked about today, please let me know. But I'll catch you guys in some of my tarot videos, which I will post later. And of course, thank you for joining me. Hopefully this resonated with you. If it did not, I am sorry. Please forgive me, and